Hi, my name is Omar Bryan and I'm a gardening horticultural tutor with the City of Dublin Education Training Board. In today's video, I'm going to take a look at transplanting a blueberry plant into a larger pot. It's been about 2 years in this pot and it needs to be moved on, so I'm going to transplant it into this pot here. This pot here that I'm going to use for the blueberry plant is I suppose a wider, shallower pot. Now blueberries, the roots on blueberries don't go very deep, so they prefer a shallow pot. The roots tend to spread more outwards, so again that would be ideal for it. Give it a good bit of space. What I had in this previously, I had petunia, which are completely dead. You can see here. They're just gone by the wayside, so those I'll be removing and getting rid of. I have some trailing verbena, which actually has survived the winter, and it was coming back, but it's very, very straggly. So actually what I'm going to do is I'll remove it out of the pot, but I'm going to take some cuttings from it. I'll show you that then when I'm doing that as well. I'll put them into this pot here. And then I had a salvia, perennial salvia in the center. Now the perennial salvias tend to be quite tender. It's what you call a tender perennial. So again, they may come back, they may not, depending on the harshness of the winter. I have cut it back completely. It feels quite sturdier, so there might be a bit of life in it yet, but I'm going to remove it from there anyway, and I'll transplant it into the ground, to this bed here, and we'll see does it give me anything for this year coming. So first of all, start off removing. I suppose I'll remove the petunias first, because and I won't show you me removing everything because that'll be quite boring to look at, but we'll cut back to when we have a little bit more removed out of this pot, and we can see where we're going to go from there. So the pot is a bit more empty here now, so what I've done, I've taken out you can see these few bits here. I've taken out the verbena so I can take some cuttings off that. There's some nice fresh growth on it. Anything that's completely dead I've left over to this side here, and this is the root ball then of the salvia. So I'm hoping there will be a bit of life in that, so I'm definitely not going to give up on it anyway. So that can be left over here on the soil anyway for now, and it can be transplanted into the ground. Now, with your blueberry plants, that's what we have here. It does need an acidic compost, so that's an ericaceous compost, if you're not familiar with it. So again, it's more acidic. It needs a higher pH than, we'll say, your general compost, which not to get too technical about it, but your general pH scale runs from 1 to 14. Most plants will grow from 5.5 to 7.5. It'll be fine for most plants. It's a neutral soil. And then the blueberry probably needs about an 8 or a 9, slightly higher. So I'm going to remove some of the compost out of this and just put it here. Just throw it over the bed here, because this will need a fresh layer of compost on it anyway. So it'll go some way to filling a small bit of the area, and then I'll top it up with ericaceous compost and pot the blueberry plant into it then. So I've removed all the soil from the pot, and I've just topped it up with a small bit of ericaceous compost from the bag here, just to give it a bit of a base there. I'll take this pot out now. I'm expecting this plant to be quite pot bound, and just to mention as well that really this should have been done a little bit earlier. It just completely went out of my head. I forgot about it. So as you can see on the blueberry plant, a lot of the buds have started to form already. Ideally you should try and do it when the plant is dormant, to move it less stress on the plant, but look, I'm going to do it now. It should be fine. Just a couple of things on the plant, looking at it there. It has just grab my secateurs just to make sure that you're cut off any kind of dead wood. So you can see here on the plant there's a small bit. Just going to cut that off. So you should look at any of your winter plants, as I said previously in other videos I've done. Any dead wood on plants, any bit of damage, you can cut back, just to clean up the plant, tidy it up. But I have a couple of suckers coming off at the base here, actually 3, so I'm actually going to remove those. So I am. So just cutting back down to the base, just to keep one stem on the plant. Now I'm going to take it out of the pot. So I have slightly loosened it already. the easiest done with one hand, but we'll get there. Now, you can see that it's quite pot bound. So what I'm going to do is loosen that up. It's quite fibrous, very fibrous, quite bouncy, quite tough. But I'm going to just get my secateurs and my trowel at that, and maybe break up the root ball just a little bit, just so that those roots have can actually help them break free out of that root ball and spread out a little bit more. So I've broken up that root ball a little bit more. You can see I've split it out a little bit, so you're exposing a few more roots that will help it to settle into the pot. But look, I wouldn't be too worried about it. The plant's in a good state. As I said, ideally you do it a little bit earlier in the season, or earlier in the year, or kind of during winter time. So I have that, kind of get it into position where you want it in the pot, as central as you can. Make sure it's not tilting one way or the other, and then you can backfill in with compost then, and just make sure you have it in the right position before you finish it up. You can always alter it slightly if you find it's not in the right final position for you. We'll just fill that up there then. So that's the pot into its final resting place there. As you can see, it's maybe a little bit left of centre, but it's fine there. Make sure the soil is level. You want to make sure it's firmly in there, but not too compacted either. So the blueberry plants are great. They don't require a huge amount of looking after. I've got 2 good crops off it the last 2 years. Now, in fairness, when I talk about 2 good crops, probably a couple of bowls of blueberries, but realistically, off one plant, that's plenty and more than enough what you're going to get out of it. But they are a nice one to have. I think the flower is lovely on them as well. And they're good pollinator friendly plants as well, so it's always a bonus. Now I'll just take a few cuttings off that verbena. Let me just grab it there. So for these cuttings, I'm just going to take maybe 5 or 6 cuttings. I'm going to put them in this pot here. I don't want too many of them either, but just it seems a shame to the plants themselves are gone past. They're gone too leggy. But if I can get maybe 5 or 6 new plants out, then that'll be perfect. So I can reuse them again for maybe another pot, or maybe even in around the blueberry, or maybe not. I might just leave the blueberry as it is. But again, you can when you're taking a cutting, you need to cut back to a growing point, or if you can at all, you can see this this one here is just is attached to the main stem, and if I can just tear that off, let's see, left with a slight heel on the plant there that I've just torn it off the main stem. Now that heel is probably a little bit long, but again, there's plenty of growth hormone contained within where the stem joins the main trunk of a plant. So that's kind of an ideal part to take a cutting from, or else you can just snip back to a growing point. If you have a secateurs, just try and make sure that it's sharp, that you're getting a nice clean cut, and you can just go in and take it there, and you can use that for your cutting either. You need to strip away, as I've done with these ones here, strip away the bottom layer of leaves, and then what I have here is my hormone rooting powder. This is an organic rooting powder, a Westland one. There's other ones you can get as well. So I'm just going to dip the base in hormone rooting powder. Then this is a handy little thing, has a little dibber. I'm going to push it in here to the soil, makes a little hole for me. Then I can place my cutting in there. Now what I have, the compost I've used here is a seed and cutting compost, so it's specifically for cuttings and seedlings. It's a nice gritty compost. It drains well, and is a good one for setting your cuttings into. Now, to make sure as well, as I haven't done with that one, but I can tear off an extra leaf, is that your leaves are not touching the soil, because when you water that soil or it gets wet, you don't want the leaves starting to rot or anything like that, and it can affect the spread fungus in the plant. So that's it. I'm just going to get a few more of those done, and then I'll be finished with that. So there you go. I have 6 cuttings in the tub here. So again, I give them probably 5 or 6 weeks and then give them a check. You'll probably know if they haven't taken, they'll start to go, the leaves will start to go crusty and will crackle, and or brown. So you'll know within a couple of weeks if they are starting to take. And then in about 5 or 6 weeks, give them a little tug. There should be a little bit of resistance there, so a root ball should have started to form, or a few roots anyway. Or if you want to just leave them there, but just try and make sure that the plants aren't touching each other. So if they are starting to get a bit too big, you can move them onto their own separate pots or into wherever you're going to move them. But again, that's just transplanting my blueberry pot in there and then trying to reuse what was already in the pot, just to make sure you're using all the plants that you have and getting the most out of them. And if you can always get cuttings from a plant, it's perfect in terms of having to rebuy them. So we'll leave it at that for today, and we have a bit of cleaning up here to do now, so I made a bit of a mess. Okay, thank you. Cheers.